Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session, all about if your parents are downsizing their home, or perhaps you are a person who needs to downsize, etc. I've got a great guest here with me today, Tracy Barrett, who is a realtor in the Northern Virginia area, and she is here to talk a little bit today with us, whether we're adult children of parents or whether we are seniors, are mature people who have said, you know what, I really need to downsize. So, Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So, first question is, how did you get involved in real estate?
I was in the nursing field, and my mother in law had been practicing real estate for a long, long time. And I had littles and needed a little bit more flexibility. And by flexibility, read, you're still working 40 to 50 hours a week, but you can do it without punching a clock 9 to 5.
Mhm.
And she said, be good at it. And I said, you're nuts. And then I went back and said, okay, maybe you're not so nuts. And we talked about it, did a business plan, and went into business together in 2011.
Fantastic. So
Mm-hmm.
2011, so you've been doing it now for 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like about being a realtor? What do you like about the real estate industry?
I recently read an article, and I believe it was one of the VPs of Sotheby's. He'd been practicing for 65 years, and he summed it up in a nutshell. What the feeling we get when we help somebody else realize their dreams
Mm-hmm.
is why you do this. And it's why
Yes.
you get sleepless nights. It's why you solve the problems. You hold their hand from start to finish so that they accomplish their goals, whether it's buying, selling, and everywhere in between as far as getting there in order to accomplish that.
That is great. That is great. So, you've been helping a lot of people,
Mhm,
obviously, reach their dreams, get to the closing
mhm,
table,
mhm.
et cetera. And when we talked, I said, well, what's your favorite thing to do? And you mentioned this whole idea of downsizing,
Right.
which so many people want or need to do. And we're also going to talk about estate sales as well, if you have a parent that passes, et cetera. So
Mhm.
let's start off with the downsizing, though. What are some of the things that you have noticed when it
Mhm.
comes to real estate and downsizing? Like, where do people start with regards to even analyzing if they should downsize or if their parents should downsize?
So there's a couple of triggers with downsizing. Usually, the happy side of downsizing is when somebody's hit a goal career-wise, they're ready to retire, and they no
Mhm.
longer need to be in the area anymore, so they're ready to downsize. Or they would like to remain in the area, but perhaps their home is bigger than it should be. So it's time to right-size the property. Ooh,
Bless
excuse
you.
me,
Bless you.
pollen is real. Um, So that's a happy trigger when there's a retirement event that happens. There are other triggers where the folks are able to, I'm going to shut this off. So sorry, should have done that before. Um, the other things that are going to trigger it are things usually like a health event or something along those lines, usually like a
Okay.
health. The home becomes too big. They aren't able to stay in place. Most folks these days do want to age in place and stay where they are as long as
Mhm.
possible.
Mhm.
By the time you're retiring, you're typically on a fixed income. Your house is almost paid off, if not
Mhm.
completely paid off. So your home and housing expenses, your shelter expense is a fixed or non-existent cost. So most people want to stay in place. And as I understand it, you actually have a product that can help them do that. Is that right? With the
Yeah, I do. So we do have some renovation loans for people with regards to being able to, turn your house into something that your parents are still able to live in as they're aging in place. So yes, we do. Now there are reverse mortgages as well. I will say that I personally don't. I have the license to do them. I just don't do them. I do warn people, though, that if your parents or you are going to get a reverse mortgage, please make sure that your family has the paperwork. I have unfortunately been a part of people losing their family homes because no one was able to pay off that loan fast enough, and
Yep.
the equity was there, the insurance was there, et cetera. So I just warn people about that with the reverse mortgages.
Right. Reverse
But
mortgages are a really great product, like you said, but
Mhm,
there are nuances there. So when doing it, whoever is going to be handling your estate upon your
mhm.
passing really does need to understand what that product is and the timelines associated with it once it closes. It's
Yeah,
also a
it's
really
usually 4
great thing
months.
to leverage. Right. It's
It's
also
usually 4 months after the person passes that you have the time to either pay off that lien, or unfortunately, that lender is going to, take the home. So we
right.
just want to make sure that these homes that our families have spent so much time, blood, sweat, and tears, getting, that it remains in the family. Because a lot of people do leave equity on the table because of that. So,
Correct, correct.
yeah.
And that's a tragedy, but it's nice to know that, again, my goal for folks are let them stay where they are most comfortable as
Mhm,
long as possible, and sometimes it's a matter of renovating showers so that there's zero barrier
mhm,
entries, installing a lift to get you up the stairs to your bedroom when you're in a multi-level home, removing carpets or putting in LVP so that there's, no barriers, no transitions, no tripping hazards. So there's lots of things folks can do to stay in their home.
yes.
So that's usually consultation number one. And when that's ultimately their goal, that's when we get them in touch with professionals so that they can stay exactly where they are and not have to sell their property. When it is obvious and the writing is on the wall for folks to downsize or right size, you can have exactly the same amount of square footage, but perhaps go to one level living. I mean, there's more than
Mhm,
one way to do it. So downsize, right size. Then that's when we start talking about what's going on. Typically, seniors have been in their homes for years. I'm not quite 50 yet, and I've been in my house 20, and I will be done with my mortgage in approximately 7 years. So, at a fairly young age, I'll be in a position to be completely paid off, which is a
mhm,
substantial amount of equity that is tied up in the real estate. Now, compound that to when you're 70, 80 years old, and there's that much more appreciation to be gained by it. So what
mhm,
we do is I typically will talk with the folks, and I'm generally, if it's not just word of mouth through their friends, I'm usually brought to the table through their financial planner or their CPA. They've
mhm,
talked with their professionals who they know, like, and trust. They're managing the portfolios. I'm going to use the moving to independent living or an assisted living scenario. Typically, independent living is where most people wind up going to a downsized scenario on. So what they end up doing is they talk about how they're going to leverage what other assets they have to get to the next place. So they've had this discussion. There's a money discussion there. I come in and talk to them about the home, get a tour, see where it is. I bring data with me. We look at the spectrum of condition in the neighborhood from the very worst to the very best. And then we kind of say, all right, in this condition, you're going to fall here on the spectrum. If you were in this condition over here, you might be able to get this much more. And then we start to look at whether or not it makes sense to do any of the improvements to the property that would have a return on the investment that makes enough sense to do it, not just to make it look pretty, but, if you put $20,000 into a property to put in new flooring and paint and maybe update a couple bathroom vanities, if you're getting an extra $60,000 out of your investment for $20,000, then that makes sense. What
yes.
doesn't make sense is if it's in disrepair and you don't have the liquidity to do anything. And yes, there's solutions which we can talk about with do it up front and then get paid at closing. But
Mhm,
generally speaking, we're going to make sense. We're going to see if it makes sense financially, but we're also going to make sense or talk about whether or not you even have the bandwidth or energy to do it. We are going to talk about timing. Do you need the equity in your home to get to where you're going? Because that typically means that we're going to be going on the market while you're living in the home.
mhm,
Or are you in a fortunate enough position that we can get you over to your new home and then we can spruce up your house, maximize the return on any investments you put into it, and then realize your return, your equity, your proceeds, and then that's where you can replenish the other buckets. So
mhm,
that's why when downsizing, it's really important that you're talking with, and in my case, I'm an associate broker. So you're talking with a real estate agent, a broker that truly understands what's on the table as far as timing, leverage, money, all of that, and is willing
Mhm.
to work with your other professionals, your CPAs, your financial planners, in order to come up with a plan that makes sense and is feasible for your family. We've done everything from having a note be drawn up that to get folks into their property so that they don't lose the unit that they really, really wanted to move to. We
Mhm.
have we've done lots of different things with folks just because it needs to be personalized to their needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And, sometimes people just, like you said, say, I don't have the energy or the bandwidth to be here during these renovations.
Mhm.
Depending on where you live, there are a lot of investors who will purchase it from you and do all of the updates, especially if there's been a lot of deferred maintenance and delayed maintenance. There's also renovation loans as well where homeowners can come in and get money wrapped up in their mortgage, a 30-year mortgage. They can get up to $150,000 in order to do that deferred maintenance as well. So somebody like Tracy could set up something where as you're having your open house, et cetera, she can say, hey, there's a Fannie Mae product called the Homestyle Renovation Loan, which I've done one. And I love that product, where you're able to, or the new homeowners are able to get those renovations done, and it's just included in their mortgage, just like the purchase price of the property. So
Right.
um, yeah, so I love the fact that you say that they're, depending on several factors, there's a personalized answer
Mhm.
for that aging individual as well as their family. So I
Right.
love that.
Right,
Hmm.
and generally speaking, I mean, I would say 70% of the properties that I'm working with when I'm helping someone through a downsizing scenario,
Hmm.
it is indeed the 2 owners that are working together or the single owner that is working to get it done, and they're able to do it by
Hmm.
themselves. If they want familial support, no one should be preventing that to happen.
Yeah.
It's gonna take many hands to move somebody out of their home who's been there for 30 and 40 years or
Yeah.
longer. Everybody, we need all hands on deck. Yeah.
Yes.
If you still have your high school yearbook and banker's box of tchotchkes from your childhood, it's time to go get those and pick those up. Um, the really great thing, so let me back up. When I said I was in nursing, I was a clinical research nurse, and I did protocols where we worked with pharmaceutical companies and we were testing drugs. And to do that, every single patient had to jump through the same exact timelines and procedures in order to get valid results.
Right.
Um, which is essentially the same thing of real estate. If we're going to sell a home, we are going to have to get it
Hmm.
ready to go to market it, find a buyer, go under contract, check all the boxes, and go to closing. That doesn't change for anyone's circumstances. What changes is for one person, if the house is vacant because it was an investment property and just sat there for years, they're going to have to potentially do less than the person that has to pack up and move an entire lifetime. So
Absolutely.
each person's needs is going to dictate the process, the professionals rather that we bring into the process to help them going. And that's really where the value comes in with a connected agent who works with all of those people that can help you pack, help you organize, work with the next place you're going. Do you have floor plans? Can we tag what's going into your new place so that we know what to put into an estate sale auction scenario to recoup some of your money?
Yeah.
Um, it's it's really it's really nuanced, and we've done it a million times, and every single time, it's a little bit different based on the person's needs.
Interesting. Interesting. So, we would think that, hey, this is like step one, two, three, four, five, but really it isn't. Really, it is a personalized plan.
It is.
Let's move over to the estate sale.
Okay.
Let's say that, mom and dad have passed on. We
Mhm,
have this property
mhm.
and I'm the adult child. What are some of the things that I need to think about? How would you work with me in order to make the estate sale happen?
So there's a lot of things that go into the estate sale. We need to make sure that you're allowed to sell it.
Ooh, that's a good
But
one.
we
Now
gotta make sure
now
that
how
we're
do you
talking
do
to the
that?
decision maker.
Yeah, I mean, is that through the will? Is that through probate? Is that through title?
All of the above.
Okay.
All of the above. So typically, when I go to on a estate sale scenario, both the owners have passed, and now I am in front of whoever is next.
Mhm.
What I will do is I will ask for copies of the death certificate. I have pulled the tax record. I'm looking at the tax record. I want to verify where the parties are. Who has passed? Have you been through probate? Are you now on there? If you've been through probate, was there a will? Is there not a will? If you've been through probate, have you received your certificate of qualification? So there's all kinds of documentation that needs to be done. And then what I do is I work very closely with a local title company, and after the listing agreement is signed, and I ask them to do a title bring down for that
Mhm.
property because I want to know if there's any surprises. For instance, most recent one that I did this past week, we did a title bring down, and sure enough, we found a Apple Federal Credit Union lien on the property for $78,000. It was recorded
Mm.
but never released. Turns out that it was a refinance that happened way back in 1998, which is sadly 26 years ago. So there's that. So it's so long story short, we now know that we need to make that go away, which means
Yes.
we're going to need death certificates for the previous owners, submit that to Apple
Mhm.
Federal Credit Union. So we've got a little bit more work there. But once you've established who the parties are that are allowed to make decisions and sell the property, we can then start going. And again, it's similar processes. We're going to come in and say, all right, here's the value of the property, the range within the neighborhood, what the prices are that can support on the low side in current condition is one
Mhm.
price. If we put in new carpet, new paint, maybe do a renovation, maybe not, we'll figure it out. If you're willing to invest some money, does it make sense? Is there enough room in it to make a little bit extra more? And I've had some people say, absolutely, let's do it. I'm doing one right now. We're doing $167,000 worth of renovations. They're blowing out the wall between the kitchen and the dining room, all permitted through the county, finishing the basement, permitted through the county. I mean, it is going to be gorgeous. That is
Mhm.
not something I recommend for everybody, but this
Right.
heir had a responsibility to their siblings and therefore felt that there was enough return on the investment because he'll probably make an extra $100,000 on the sale of the property by actually doing the work. So it made sense to him to do it. To me, it's a lot of effort.
So he
For him.
himself will make an extra 100,000?
Spending $167,000, he will make an extra $267,000 on the property.
Interesting.
Right.
Okay.
Because it was that out of date and deferred maintenance
Mhm.
and that type of thing. So
Mhm.
by bringing it current, and this is where kid gloves happen.
Mhm.
Sometimes with the older generation, at least the way I was raised, is like, my grandfather would have the jar of bolts and the jar of nails and the jar of everything because whenever he took anything apart, he saved it for later because he was going to fix it. And we are
Yes.
long past that. We are in a generation of very, very, very busy professionals. They see
Yes.
beautiful on TV and they want beautiful right away.
Yes.
They are working 2 jobs, they typically have some kids in there, and they have
Mhm.
one of my favorite quotes that somebody said, "There's no time, no tools, and no talent," and therefore, they are not willing to do the work themselves or have the patience to wait to contract it out over 15 years.
Mhm.
So, these sellers, whether you're an estate or a downsizer who have equity and money, you could spend $40,000 renovating your property, and it is not unusual for you to net back again $80 to $100,000 more because you've just spoon-fed HGTV to your consumer who
Yes.
was willing to mortgage your improvements instead of waiting and doing it themselves over the course of time.
Yeah.
So somebody's going to do it. You mentioned the investor loves a property where it needs to be fixed up. The investor
Mhm.
loves that because there's margin. And if I have the contacts to do the work and you have the money to pay for the work and the time to do it, that meaning let it happen,
Yes.
then realize the return. If you're not in a rush, then realize the return. If you're in a rush, then let's go. Stick a sign in the ground. Let's go on the market.
Yeah.
So we can do anything. So with the estates, the biggest thing with the estate sales, because we kind of got off topic, biggest thing with the estate sale is to make sure you know that you do have the right to sell the property. We want to do
Mhm.
a title bring down, make sure there's no surprises, no liens, judgments on the property, anything like that. Because if there are, we need to be able to clear those up before we put the sign in the ground or at least be in the works to get it done because you can't convey the property if there's a problem with the title.
Right.
What's the will look like? What's the trust look like? So if those documents are available, then we will provide that to the title company just to make sure we're not missing anything, make sure that the parties are all present who need to be present. And then we kind of go through the same process all over again. Again, you've got to prep it, market it, get it on the market, get under contract, go to closing. There's things in there, and having the right professionals to shepherd you through your experience is what we bring to the table.
Right. Right. I mean, so I've obviously had family members. I shouldn't say obviously, but I have had family members that have passed on. And yeah, there's a lot that goes into closing out their estate and getting everything transferred and, getting back to quote unquote normal after that. So I definitely appreciate you talking about the process that
Yeah.
people go through, especially as they mourn. And the
Mhm.
longer the person has lived in the property and the more stuff that there is, and
Mhm.
even the least likely hoarder, if they've lived in the property for 50 years, there's just a lot of stuff in
There's a
there,
lot of stuff, and it
and it
just kinda
always takes
multiplies.
longer. Yeah, it
It
always takes longer to clear it out. So,
It does, and it can be exhausting, so having professionals in your corner that can help reduce that stress load and turn it
Mhm.
into manageable bite-sized pieces is
Mhm.
what's so important. It's
Yeah.
so important, and again, everybody's different. Some people need to sell right away. The
Mhm.
house is in jeopardy of foreclosure, the house,
Mhm.
there is no money in the estate, but there's still a mortgage on the house, so
Mhm.
somebody's gotta pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
So, typically, the best way to stop the hemorrhage is to sell it. But
Mhm.
then again, as I said before, if you're not in a rush to and you have some emotional time and you wanna get back one last time, then take your time. I mean, you
Yeah.
just have to know your audience, ask what they're trying to do, understand the pitfalls
Mhm.
of going too fast or too slow, and then educate and let folks make their decisions.
Yeah, yeah. So, any final words of wisdom or encouragement or pieces of advice with regard to downsizing and estate sales?
The big thing with downsizing and estate sales is you do not have to go it alone. For many people, they may have owned maybe, 3, 4 houses in their lifetime, but the rules the game is not the same. It's constantly changing, and so
Mhm,
having somebody in your corner that can explain the market, explain the process, and again, if I said it once, I'll say it again, understand your situation and work with your trusted professionals, your CPA, your financial planner, to help transition you into the next phase, whether
mhm,
they're helping you buy the place, you've identified the place, it doesn't matter. If you've got a team in your corner, it's going to go far more smoothly. Bring them in early,
mhm.
ask the questions early. I mean, I'm talking year and a half, 2 years in advance. What do I need to be working on? What do I need to be doing? Because it's a lot easier, for instance, if you've got exterior work that needs to be done on the property, then let's wait till the fall instead of doing it in the spring when the roofing
Right.
companies and the siding companies are a little less busy. Let's capitalize on the downtime for the contractors
Mhm.
where you don't have to pay as much
Yeah.
because they're slower, and you get a little bit more attention. We can plan for peak market instead of, if you have the luxury for planning, instead of
Mhm.
having to do it right now because there's been an event. The
Right.
good news is that if there's an event, a professional is going to be able to pivot and make that happen quickly so that you can maneuver and get to where you need to be. That's appropriate.
I agree with that. I agree with that. The more you're able to plan, the better. And
Yep.
again, I will say this to anybody. If you have a relative that is transitioning, get in front of them as early as possible. Make sure that you know where all the paperwork is. I don't know how people feel about this, but even run a title search while they're alive to see if there's anything on
Absolutely.
there so that you're able to say, okay, grandma, what is this? Can I get the paperwork? Oh, this is a
Absolutely. If
reverse
you can do that
mortgage.
while somebody is alive, that is
Yeah.
so my family, we affectionately referred to it as the death letter. Um,
Mhm,
and my grandfather started it, and once a year, I'm sorry, no, once a quarter,
mhm,
he had a spreadsheet. It was an Excel
mhm,
spreadsheet, and it was every single bank account he had, investment account he had, the
mhm,
state, where the safety security box was. He
mhm,
made sure we had current copies of his will, my
mhm,
grandmother's will, everything, and once a quarter, he would send an update to his letter, his package that he had. And it just made things so much easier because when he did
Absolutely.
pass, it was still work. I mean, let's
Mhm.
be very clear. There was work to be done. But you pulled out the letter and we just called the funeral home and they did what they needed to do. And you just worked
Mhm.
yourself down the list. And there wasn't any mystery or surprise. There was
Yeah.
procedure. There was definitely procedure, but it made it a lot better. So I think in general, as you're planning to downsize and you're getting in, having your affairs in order is
Mhm.
key. Make sure you have your estate plan set up with a will, a trust, advanced medical directives, powers of attorneys, all of that,
Yeah.
so that it's just easier and your family's not left guessing. That's end of life. But in general, with the transition, as with anything, if you have the luxury to plan it, bring in your trusted resources early and be ready to execute with the plan and revisit it as needed until you
Mhm.
are able to pull the trigger and go.
Perfect, perfect, and I agree, and thanks to Tori and Dreams for coming in. She's one of my accountant friends, so I know that she's probably, hopefully, resting today with a margarita or something like
Right.
that
I
after
mean,
tax day yesterday.
the day after the slog. It is
Yes,
April
yes.
16th,
So
folks.
yes, absolutely, and she works with some high net worth individuals, so I always love to, have her here. So,
Yeah,
okay, everybody, well, again, I'm Cheree with SimpliFunded, simplifunded.com. Especially for my real estate investors, we have loans, available for you, and not only loans, but we do a lot of analysis for our clients, making sure that you're building a healthy, real estate portfolio. Tracy, how can people get in touch with you if they want to talk a little bit more about downsizing of their parents or estate sales for their parents?
you can reach me at focusonnova.com.
Say that one more time for people.
Focusonnova.com. And I don't think we mentioned it, but I'm with Century 21 Redwood Realty out in Fairfax. And my real estate team, I run a team with 7 agents, is Focus on Nova Real Estate.
Perfect, perfect.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the next podcast. Take
Thanks for the
care.
invitation.
Bye bye.
Bye.